You mentioned before about games with DRM needing to connect online to certify the DRM. This is a problem a lot of people ran into the other day with the PSN outage. People had a
Yeah.
bunch of physical games, and people have thought, "Oh, I have a physical game. It works. It's physical." Nope, not if the servers are down.
Yeah. That's kind of a. What's, I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for. It's kind of like an outdated. It's becoming an outdated concept. Where once upon a time, it used to thought that if you have a physical copy, you're good. But
Mhm.
if you're on the PC, so how that hasn't been true there for a long
Yeah, I remember
time. I
when
mean,
you would buy box games and you get a Steam code in the box.
yeah, yeah. Or there was another one where I think that I think there was like a Halo
Mm.
game where they released the game, but it just like all it did have a disc, but all that was on the disc was like an installer for,
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
game
that's
was
been
like
a
90
bunch of
gigs or
games.
something
Yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah, like uh, the so physical versus digital is meaningless now because, well, again, one of the games we pushed that was the candidate for this was The Crew. They have physical copies on Xbox, PlayStation. But on the flip side, like a GOG game, you can buy that, put it on a USB or something. That's it. It's yours for life. So it's all the main metric is if the company were to just shut down their servers today, would you still be able to play the game? If the answer is no, then it's at risk.
I don't think I've ever mentioned it, but with the crew, what is the specific issue that the crew has? Because you mentioned it had multiplayer, but for anyone who hasn't played the game, not really aware of it, like why is the single player not work?
Oh well, yeah, yeah. The Crew was it's an interesting scenario because there have been multiple games like this before that I would
Oh,
have acted
sure.
on if I thought we had a chance. Like the first one that kind of hit me was Battleforge. Then
Mm.
later there's one called Darkspore. But there's been lots of them like Dust 513, Hawken. It's there's a lot of games but the Crew is like just right.
Mm.
Yeah, this is another reason why the single player versus multiplayer versus MMO isn't that helpful with the law because, okay, The Crew is open world driving game. It contains a full single player campaign where you have cutscenes, a story, races as your levels. In between the races, you can drive across the country, and if you're online, which you had to be, people you might see other players just driving along there. So it's kind of like they mixed the two in between,
Mhm.
and you could race with up to 7 other players at the same time. So 8 player game total. But Ubisoft marketed this as an MMO. So it's like we're just checking off every. It's like we're taking all multiplayer, single player, MMO, just putting them in a blender and saying it's. So if we created an exception for MMOs or an exception for multiplayer,
Mhm.
well, now we've just killed all the single player campaign.
Mhm.
And like there are other games like this, like Destiny or Destiny 2, where is that a single player or multiplayer? Well, it's kind of both. They really blend together.
Mhm.
Or Need for Speed 2015 is like that. The Division,
Mhm.
that's another one
Mhm.
where it's like we're really blurring the lines between what single player and multiplayer means. It's more like how you want to play it.
Right.
So
I think a example of a company that has handled that model well is the way that From Software does it with the Souls games, where it's obviously a very different kind of game, but you think about it in the abstract. It's a fully single player game, cutscenes, all that stuff, but you can, if you're online, players can invade your world and you can fight them. But if you're offline, game works perfectly fine. A good example of this is the early versions of Dark Souls 1, which had really, really bad remote code execution bugs. So they took the servers offline because they could not keep that going. They had no idea how to fix it and just weren't going to touch it. So they shut the servers down, but the only thing that broke in that game was the online connectivity and any of the quests that were connected to that, because you couldn't, invade people. You couldn't do like the any of the factions you could join that were related to that. But besides that, like, those games are exactly the way you would want this to work.
yeah, or like I think another thing was like players could leave each other
Yeah,
messages
yeah, yeah.
to. I mean, yeah, see, that's the sort of thing where if that was the standard, like you are losing some features when the support goes down, but if that was the standard for games that are primarily a single player thing, I probably never would have started this campaign. But now that I've had to go through all this crap and time and energy to get underway, it's like, well, let's just end this. Let's take our best shot at ending this once and for all, since I've had to go through all this trouble. And again, it varies so much on the game, how practical it is and how the features. Well, actually, I think the practicality, again, I think it's, as long as you're giving the players a chance, good enough. That's how I feel about it. Because if it's a game players really want to play, and there's all these hoops they have to jump through with getting it working, post support, that's fine. Whereas if it's, let's say the game wasn't very good, nobody really wants to play it again, they just release like this kind of half-ass build, well, fine. Then if nobody wants to play it, then fine, nobody needs to play it. It's just that don't take away the possibility for those who do want to and paid money for it.